Like, if you're a Christian watching this, do you agree with what the guy said? Because just from us looking at it, it feels like Islam and being a Muslim was disrespected. So why would I listen to what he has to say?
I feel like a lot of these personalities are talking about an Islam that doesn't exist. Hey guys, welcome back to Muslim Minds. Today we're going to react to how to present the gospel to a Muslim. So let's check it out.
Yeah, I know we have a lot of Christian viewers, so we want to see how they would explain it to a Muslim. So we'll start now.
Brings him to his knees 5 times a day, and he says he's not lacking anything in his soul and life. His values and morals appear many times stronger than Christians he knows. How would a Christian approach someone like that with the gospel?
I think one of the most important questions you can ever ask a Muslim, but most importantly, always try to befriend them first. If you get into a vacuous argument, you will almost never win it unless you have the protracted opportunities back and forth like Nabil Qureshi's case.
I actually think that's a good point, because if you just come across as an opposer or you're arguing with the person that you're trying to convince, they're just going to become naturally defensive. So if your first idea is to just attack the person you're trying to convince, you're not going to do it.
Yeah, that's a great point. Like, some of our comments, some people just start off being literally disrespectful. We have a lot of great comments.
Yeah, most of them I would say are very
for the people that just come off disrespectful, there's like, it doesn't like make us think, oh, Christianity is good.
We just start rolling our eyes. We get, obviously annoyed. It doesn't make us feel passionate for Christianity, not at all.
Yeah, but the people that are respectful, and just like we're respectful, we really appreciate that.
Yeah.
With a friend of his, they periodically and regularly would get together and pick out the thorny areas of the other person's faith, which you can do with a friend. But just first understand your faith well. It's very important for you to understand what the Christian faith is about, which is very distinctive from the Islamic worldview. Do you know the Christian worldview, the Judeo-Christian worldview is the only worldview, hear me carefully now, is the only worldview where your salvation is a gift, and that of grace, not of works, lest any man should boast.
Well, this is an interpretation, but there are many Christian beliefs where this is not the case and your works are definitely involved. I don't know why he's saying that, because the largest sect in Christianity, being Catholicism, also emphasizes doing your works. Judaism as well does not preach or practice or teach that you can just have belief in God and you're saved.
Was he saying that for Muslims as well?
No, he said only Judeo-Christian. I don't know why he's saying Judeo, because that's not true in the Jewish tradition whatsoever.
Yeah, that's strange, because what we've learned so far, it's not just believing. A lot of people in our comments have even said you need to do good works as well. So that is something that's different, I guess, for Muslims.
Well, even in the Jewish faith, they also have code, practices, laws, all these different types of things that the Jews had to live up to. Also repenting, sacrifices, like these are works in a sense.
There's no other worldview that gives you that option. Every pantheistic worldview, Hinduism, Buddhism, Islam, Sikhism, all of them are karmic. Every birth is a rebirth, every birth is a payment for the previous life. Islam, Muslims, if you ask a Muslim, how do you know you're going to get into paradise? His answer would be, my good deeds will have to outweigh your bad deeds.
No, that's not true. A Muslim who actually knows a thing about his faith will realize that in the hadith, the most authentic hadith, that the way to enter paradise is only through grace, by getting Allah's favor and getting that mercy. But just like Catholicism, we don't discount the effect of your good works, because your good works is supposed to be proof of your faith. Actions are louder than words. So if you claim to have faith in something and your actions are completely opposite of that, then do you truly believe? I would say no, you don't, because you can just say you believe in something, but if you don't emulate a life even related to what you're believing, then it's not faith whatsoever.
Yeah, and even if you do believe, but you constantly do actions that are bad, you're just living a hypocritical lifestyle at that point. So
yeah, and what he's referring to about the good deeds outweighing the bad deeds, this is important, but it's a measure of your faith. Your good deeds are directly related to your faith. How much faith did you put in God? How much belief? And did you live your life showing that you were truly faithful? It's related, but you enter heaven not through your good deeds. It's explicitly mentioned in the hadith that you cannot enter Jannah based off your own actions. It's only through the mercy of Allah. But to get the mercy of God, you have to strive for it. You have to, number one, believe, and then abstain from sin and try to strive your best to do good works. That's the whole point.
You ask him a simple question, do you know if they will? His answer will be inshallah. It's the wish or the will of God that whether my good deeds will outweigh my bad deeds. Almost every Muslim I have talked to, without exception, almost every Muslim has come to Christ in one of two ways. Either through a dream, where God spoke to them in a dream, or through the love of Christ shown to that Muslim by another believer.
I would say a dream is not sufficient as evidence, because you also have plentiful of Muslims or even people of different faith traditions that have dreams, because dreams can very well be something that's inspired from your own life experiences or what your brain is preoccupied with. Like if I want a burger, I might dream about a burger. It may not, it's not something divine. But then there are also Muslims that dream of the Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. You have other faith traditions dreaming about other things. It doesn't always necessarily mean that it's something divine.
A dream is not, it's a personal experience. While we do believe in personal experiences that God presents himself or some stuff like that, we can't use that as proof or use a dream as a proof that one religion or even Islam is right. You can't use a dream. There's objective proofs we believe in.
And dreams are very subjective.
Yeah, saying a dream is not a good proof. So.
And also to mention that we show the love of Jesus for that Muslim. That's why they convert. Well, there are also Christians that also convert to Islam and different faith traditions because they believe that religion is accepting them. So really your feelings also have to be something you set aside, because a religion, you shouldn't accept it based off how it makes you feel. You should accept it based off if it makes the most logical sense and if it appears to be let me actually rephrase that. It's fine to accept a faith based off your feelings, but that should not be the only reason you accept something. It has to be logical. Like if someone has such a strong attachment to Hinduism or Buddhism or something like that, that's not a proof. It's just how it may personally align with their lifestyle, so they will take it. But that doesn't always mean that it's the correct thing.
I have a very dear friend who went to be a missionary. I won't tell you which country. He was born and raised there, came to this part, came to know the Lord. And his wife was an American gal. He came from the Middle East. And she used to go to church, and he despised it. On Wednesday nights, she would go to a Bible study. They had one car. He would go to pick her up. And he would be waiting outside. He told me the story. He said, and sometimes the Bible study would be going longer, and he'd be breathing, threatening, and slaughter sitting in the car. And the pastor would come out with a tray with some sandwiches or cookies and a cup of coffee or tea and offer it to him while he was waiting. That so touched him. He said, I can tell you this, if the reverse were true waiting outside a mosque, nobody would even think of doing that for you because of the way.
This is like just dumb. That's not true at all.
Yeah, that's not
That's
true.
very subjective as well. Maybe you have a very closed off Christian church and they don't like outsiders, and you have one that's extremely nice. Same thing with the masjid. You can go, there are masjids in the United States that have open house. You come and they like have a whole feast for the whole community to come and visit. That's not a proof of a religion.
I mean, in Islam, we preach we preach for hospitality. That's a major part of our religion, like treating our guests well, showing respect to elder people.
Especially for non-believers, because that would be an incentive. You would try to want them to perceive you as good to have them convert. Yeah,
so him saying that is just false. It just seems like he has some, obviously has a bias, but I think it's a little disrespectful.
Yeah, definitely a bias, but it's just like that's a extremely baseless claim.
They would despise your faith. Said that this pastor knew I was waiting and didn't want to come into the church, so he'd bring me a cup of tea or coffee and some sandwiches, cookies. Gradually melted his heart. One thing led to another. Through the study of the Bible and the loving extension of friends, he came to know Christ. But oftentimes I have posed this question to the Muslim. If you don't know whether you're ever going to reach paradise, what is your assurance? He has no assurance.
Why would that be? Why do you have to be assured? That's the whole point. You don't know where you're going. You know that God is merciful and forgiving and loving.
That's actually incorrect. We do have assurances in the hadith. A man came to the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ and said, if I just do the minimum 5 pillars of Islam, will I enter heaven? And the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ said yes. So that's an assurance right there. I guess he didn't know that hadith. But it's also like, even though we're Muslims, we do bad things, we could go to hell, But we know every Muslim, this is in Islam, every Muslim will eventually go to heaven. So him saying we don't have an assurance, it's just obvious he isn't educated about Islam.
He's ignorant about Islam.
Yeah, I mean, and he said in the beginning, don't be rude to Muslims or you'll turn them away, but it seems like he's being rude right now. So
he's being dismissive of what the faith actually teaches, or he's saying things without knowing. Like Hamza said, there's a hadith that talks about how every Muslim will enter paradise, but some Muslims will actually be burned in the fire of hell for some time period. So that is one element. The next element is, it's not this great unknown mystery like, oh, are we going to heaven or hell? We don't know. Every day is just this overwhelming fear that I'm not going to make it to heaven. That's not the case, because Muslims believe God to be the most merciful, the most compassionate, the most loving. We have trust in him. We know that if we fulfill the 5 pillars of Islam, we'll be granted Jannah, but we don't know for 100% certainty because we're not the all-knowing. We know that we're not all-knowing.
We don't know that we're going to enter Jannah at first, but we know eventually every Muslim will enter Jannah. It's a guarantee.
You have strong incentives to believe you're going to paradise, but the reason you can't know definitively is so you don't become lax and think that you've earned it in this world and you fall into sin. That's the whole point. This world is supposed to be a striving, and there's plenty of indicators in Islam for someone to have a good feeling like, you know what, I believe that I'm going to enter Jannah, inshallah, by God's will. But that's not like an extreme unknown that you're just living your whole life with uncertainty. And even if that was the case, I don't see how this is a proof of anything.
Yeah, let's continue on.
And I say to you, a God who is perfect, a God who is gracious, a God who is merciful and forgiving, can offer you that assurance, because he paid the ultimate price to give you that assurance in the death of his son, and that grace and forgiveness is offered to you.
With the accounts we have about Jesus' crucifixion, I mean, it's very painful and very extreme details, but it's, I mean, when you consider all the sin that has ever been done from the beginning of time until the end, that one crucifixion doesn't seem to be sufficient to pay for all of those sins. People do things to other people that are even more painful than the crucifixion. Like the way the cartel torture people. Their torture methods are the most insane torture methods. Are those not sin?
Yeah, and I do agree with what Rohaib said, but let's just say for a fact you do believe in the Trinity. Everything he said was false, so the whole premise he built that argument on is false to begin with, so... You know.
One man responded by saying the prodigal son's story doesn't talk about the son going out, looking out for the little guy to bring him back or whatever it was. I said the father left the home in that story, left the home to welcome the son back. I said that is the point of the message of God seeking you out. I said there's no prophet going out either from that story, so your whole worldview gets defeated in the process of raising that question. But God left his home, come to receive you and me. The one thing you must...
Also, another element that just hit me is whenever the Jews would do a sacrifice, they wouldn't torture the animals before they sacrifice them. They would sacrifice them, and the whole point of sacrifice is because animals were a commodity back then worth something of value. So when you commit a sin, you sacrifice something of value to God to show that you are submissive to God and you're regretful of your actions and you're paying your due by getting rid of something that is of high value to you in a society where these kind of things are a commodity. So Jesus being a sacrificial lamb, I don't understand why it's necessary that he has to have pain, because for the sacrifices in the Jewish theology, pain was not a requirement of the sacrifice. So the fact that he suffered for our iniquities, that is quoted from Isaiah, that doesn't really seem to make sense in the concept of how God even views sacrifices in general. Why would God need a painful sacrifice to forgive all of mankind?
Understand is this, and a Muslim who came to Christ in Malaysia said this to me. I was buying a suitcase from him, and I had to pay the price of listening to 30 minutes of his testimony before I bought the suitcase. He said this to me, and my friend standing beside me, he said, if people say that the Quran and the Bible are very similar in their teaching, he said, I just say to or ask if the God of the Quran and the God of the Bible are the same. He said, just look at the two lives. Look at the life of Muhammad and look at the life of Jesus, and you tell me whether it's the same God they are talking about. there's a world of a difference in the life of Jesus in contradistinction to any other claimant to divine or prophetic status.
I mean, first off, he's being very vague. I don't know exactly what he means, but it seems a little disrespectful. We do believe there's only one God. So we believe that God, as Muslims and Christians and Jews, it's all one God. Now the Christians believe in the Trinity, which is fine if you want to believe that. We don't believe that's true, but we all believe there's only one God. So he's just dismissing all of Islam without providing any evidence, and the evidence he brings up was not true.
The difference is so stark that the attractiveness of his love is unparalleled anywhere else. I just present the love of Christ to them. At the end of a conversation with Sheikh Hussein in Damascus, Syria, he's the leading Shiite cleric in Syria. We chatted for nearly 2 to 3 hours, the interpreter between us, and he would ask me one question about my faith, I would answer it. I would ask him one question about his faith, he would answer it. Very cordial. He would always address me as Professor Zacharias, Professor Zacharias. And then finally he said, I want to make one more statement. He said, I think it's about time for us Muslims to stop asking if Jesus died on the cross and to start asking why.
Well, if one Shia cleric has that opinion, again, this is, so far, this whole video just seems to be extremely subjective. This is not, I would say, so it says how to present the gospel to a Muslim. This will not work for probably, I would safely say,
yeah, like
the majority
I said,
of Muslims.
In the beginning he said, don't be disrespectful or else Muslims will resent and not accept. But it seems all the evidence he said would make someone resentful, and it wasn't really evidence, as we talked about. And he's being a bit disrespectful and generalizing all of Islam to one Shia cleric. It doesn't... I hope you guys can see, like, from our point of view, this doesn't really make sense. So.
Yeah, because what he's doing is he's, like, getting everything wrong about the Islamic faith. He's discarding all of that while making his own claims about why Christianity is just so amazing and Jesus has so much love. Like, if you're going to tell people that the love that you'll feel from Jesus is unparalleled, or the love you will feel about Jesus when you learn about Jesus is unparalleled, what about the 2 billion Muslims that love the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ more than their own families? What about the Muslims
and we as Muslims love Jesus too. We believe in Jesus and love him so much. So that doesn't take away from us being Muslim anyway.
Sheikh Hussein, do I have permission? Do I have your permission to quote you, sir? He said, you have my permission on that. The pastor who had taken me to the forum said, I was stunned when he made the comment. What prompted that was a repeated response I kept making on the crucifixion, on the death of Christ, on Calvary, why it was so critical to cleanse this heart and to make us acceptable to the Father because we were otherwise unclean. Finally, he said, it's time for us to start asking why. So the certainty of heaven and the gift and grace of Christ would be issues to which you need to be coming back. But be prepared for issues like the Trinity and all the others that they will throw your way. So do your homework.
That's a great story. Great. Thank you so much for that.
Out of the things he said, I agree with the first point. I don't think there's another point he made in this video that I agree with.
Yeah, in the beginning, he talked about not being rude. If you want to present something to someone, you don't disrespect them, first off, in their beliefs, which makes sense. We agree with that. But it seems like he contradicted that throughout his lecture, which... if you're a Christian watching this, do you agree with what the guy said? Because just from us looking at it, it feels like Islam and being a Muslim was disrespected. So why would I listen to what he has to say?
I feel like a lot of these personalities are talking about an Islam that doesn't exist. Because then when you talk to us who have been practicing Muslims our entire lives, or other practicing Muslims for all of history, and the way we understand our theology, the way we understand salvation, the way we understand heaven and hell, the way we understand the Prophet's character, all these negative things you can say about the Prophet come from what? Hadith. Authentic, unauthentic, ambiguous hadith. It all comes from our tradition. So there's no way someone can say that Muslims are just ignorant to their own Prophet's actions. Yeah, there are definitely so many Muslims that are ignorant of hadith, But if you quote like a weak hadith, fabricated hadith, or authentic hadith, there's also context, right? So he's got the personality of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ wrong, because with that entire tradition, the Muslims en masse for all of history believe him to be the most perfect human that has ever walked the earth. Militarily, politically, familially, whether you agree with it or not, as Muslims, it does not matter to us, because our morality is not based off the subjective opinions of random people. It's based off what God has revealed, and we may not always agree with it. If we don't like war, that's something that we have to swallow. If we don't like Arabic, that's something we have to swallow. If we don't like any other aspect of Islamic law or whatever God has revealed, that doesn't necessarily matter. So, and if you study the life of the Prophet Muhammad ﷺ from the most authentic sources, without a lens on just trying to find him as a warmonger or someone whose morality is just battered, then you're going to come with honest opinions that he's actually one of the greatest humans who have ever existed. And many secular historians say that the Prophet ﷺ is one of the greatest humans that have ever lived, based off his life, moral character, and whatever he's accomplished in his life. So I just think that based off this guy's presentation, he just demonstrated that he's ignorant. And I don't think any Muslim would honestly react positively that knows something about their faith. Maybe an ignorant Muslim, maybe a Muslim who isn't very practicing or aware, they might be enticed by the love that's preached in Christianity. But I would say to someone who's actually studied their faith, these kind of arguments are not going to work, because we're going to just immediately recognize, oh, this person has no idea what they're talking about.
Yeah, I agree. I hope if anyone's watching this, we're not trying to come off as disrespectful, but if you went to like Sunday school when you were 7 as a Muslim, you would see what this guy was saying about Islam was incorrect. So it just seems, disingenuine. So
like the whole comment about, oh, if you go to a masjid, they're not going to serve you cookies. Like, dude, this is so subjective. I'll go to the masjid right now and make sure that some Christian visits, and I'll give them cookies and water. Like,
okay. So yeah, if you guys have any comments based on my reaction, please let us know in the comment section below. Like and subscribe for more types of videos. Anything else you guys want us to react to regarding Christianity, any religion, just let us know in the comments. And Assalamu alaikum.
wa alaikum salam.